Alrighty. Okay. Alrighty. For the benefit of those just coming in. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. All right, so we're going to look at these questions that a lot of you got wrong and try to figure out where the misunderstanding is, which means I need you to talk to me. All right, we got almost everybody, and I'll wait one more minute. All right, so there were two sets of questions. The first one was on ecological tolerance. All right, so this was the question, and those are the choices. So I want you to take a look at it for a minute, read it over. Mm. Like I said, I'm gonna give it another minute or so for folks to come in. Did y'all ever, I know y'all are kind of young, but my children grew up watching Arthur, the cartoon on, now you don't even get PBS channels anymore. But they grew up watching Arthur. Arthur was an aardvark. All right, so hopefully you've had a chance to read it over. And what did you select as an answer? And you can just type it in the chat, or somebody can come off mute and just call it out and tell me why. If you answer in the chat, answer to everybody and not just me. All right, Natalie says it's B. Anybody else have a thought, an answer? You agree, disagree? All right, one of the words in answer B. All right, Akia says B. Francis, thank you, thank you. Okay, Francisco, Jesse, all say B. Everybody agrees that it's B. If everybody agrees that it's B, then some of y'all just didn't think that through when you were doing it in the AP classroom because folks got this wrong. All right, so you need to know what a keystone species is. And so what is a keystone species? Somebody look it up, type it, put it in the chat. What's a keystone species? In order to make that selection, you have to know what a keystone species is. So what is a keystone species? And again, if you type it in the chat, please send it to everybody. Anybody trying to answer the question? What is a keystone species? Somebody type it in the chat. All right, Jesse says that a keystone species is a species that the ecosystem depends on. Thank you. All right, so according to this article, so this is basically the claim that the author of this article is making. According to him, because of the declining actions of the aardvark, which makes burrows, which other organisms use. So if the aardvarks decline, then they don't make burrows and it affects other species. So that's what makes them a keystone species. So yes, it does. Their decline would have trophic cascade effect on and that's another word you need to know what that means. What does trophic cascade mean? Somebody look that up and tell me what. We're going to look at vocabulary words today. Because in order to answer questions properly, you need to know what the vocabulary means. What does trophic cascade mean? Somebody look that up, please. Because this one was multiple choice. This could be an FRQ question, but you'll have to explain this. So what does trophic cascade mean? And if you don't know, you should be looking it up. All right, Kia says it's the removal of a top predator that causes reciprocal changes in the population of the lower trophic levels. All right, and keep in mind, trophic level are feeding levels. Okay, so we start at the bottom with producers. They're the only ones that make their own food. And then we have primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, and sometimes quaternary consumers. And then, so the removal of the top predator, which would be our tertiary or quaternary consumer, affects everything underneath it. Okay. Usually, in this case, it's going to it'll cause hardships for those underneath, but sometimes it causes the opposite effect, an overgrowth. If there's no predator, top predator, then that means that the ones underneath it have more to eat. There's more of them to feed on the ones below. So then that level underneath becomes lower. So it has a cascading event. It just kind of trickles down into the different levels. Some will increase, some will decrease, and eventually the one that the top predator was feeding, eventually they'll eat so much they'll run out of food, and so on. So it will have what they call, as he said, a cascading effect on the environment. All right, next one. So that was question. There were three questions in that. All right, take a minute to read this over and then think about what your choice and answer would be. This is still under ecological tolerance. Oh, okay, Ladanian says it's D. Anybody else have an opinion? Anybody else agree, disagree? Okay, Key agrees. All right, the answer is D. It said the bull trout are unable to live in high sediment loaded waters. How did the waters get to be high sediment, contain high sediments? What caused it? The dam removal. Good. Thank you, Natalie. All right. So they create dams in order to, um, what happens when they build a dam is on one side of the dam, create a reservoir of water, and on the other side, it usually diminishes the water supply. So there's always um, harm to the ecosystem when they build a dam. Okay. And they usually build a dam for our benefit because it's for hydroelectric purposes. But it always helps one side of the ecosystem and destroys the other. So in this case, where being as they're not able to cross over to where the water is flowing or pooling or deeper, um, they're stuck in the side that has a lot of sedimentation. Okay, which means if there's a lot of sediment, there's very little water. They can't spawn where they want to spawn. So um, they run into problems there. All right, anybody not understand why D is the correct answer? And again, I'm doing this because when I was going through your scores, there were a lot of people who got 0, 1, 2. About 2 people got 3. So if you were one of those people, this is the time to say something. All right, this is the third question under ecological tolerance. So read that over and then tell me what you think. Yes, I'm gonna, when we're done with going over these 2 sets of questions, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna reset, the answers, and you'll have a chance to do it again. And hopefully everybody will get a 3 this time. If you already got a 3, I won't reset yours, so you won't have to do it again, but everybody who did not get a 3, I am going to reset your answer so that you have this opportunity to fix it. All right, so NOAA is how they normally refer to those initials. Okay, I got one person says it's B, one person says it's D. Anybody else have a thought? Okay, another says, okay, we got more B's. B, yes. All right. So yes, B is the correct answer. B is the correct, and the increased rainfall events in the United States are decreasing the tolerance of fish and their marine species in the Gulf because of the decreased concentration of oxygen. What you have to remember too is oxygen dissolves in the water. So we think that because it's water and water is H2O, that that's what helps them to breathe. That's not where they get their oxygen from. They have gills and they are capable of removing dissolved oxygen from the water. Okay. So if you disturb the flow of the water, the temperature of the water, remember oxygen is a gas. So when gases dissolve best in cooler waters, the warmer the water, the less oxygen there'll be because the oxygen will eva evaporate, leave the water. It's kind of weird to think that the gas evaporates, but that's what it does. It kind of comes out of solution. Okay. All right. So that's those. Okay, so now let's look at the next question. All right, so the next question was 2.5 was the natural disturbances in an ecosystem. And I just included these pictures for you to think about what natural disturbances are. And they could be wildfires, it could be drought, it could be tornadoes, flooding. All of those are natural disturbances to an ecosystem. Deforestation. So, and I gave that one as an example so that when you have nice, lots of trees and you have shading, you have places for uh, habitats for certain organisms that live in the trees, you have nutrients. All of those things are provided by having a forest. And then when you take it out, it changes the composition of the minerals, of the fertilize, the decay is different. So the soil concentration becomes different. So a lot of things change when there are no trees. All right, so this was the first question. They gave you a graph, and the graph has a hectare, which means how much space it's taking up, and the time and years since the glacier retreat. That means you had a glacier and then it started to shrink. All right, based on the data shown in the graph, which of the following events occurred after the glacial retreat? So you've got 3 different types of trees. You've got alder, spruce, and hemlock trees. So each one is represented by a line. Now, what you have to think about is if there's ice on the ground, everything is covered. There's nothing living on it right now. And then the ice starts to retreat. So now you have bare ground. So what's going to happen if you have bare ground? What is the possibility of something happening if you have bare ground? And you got to look at what happened first. So the graph for all three trees seems to go up. It reaches a peak. One of them, the hemlock, kind of levels off, and the other two kind of start to decline after 100 years. But what did they start to do after the glacial retreat? What is the initial thing that happened after the glacial retreat? And again, think about the fact that now that the glacier is gone, the land is bare. What's going to happen first? All right, Arsha says A. Marlisa says A. Shakobi says A. All right. Yes. And here again, vocabulary. You need to know what primary succession is. Primary succession means that it's going to start from rock and things are eventually you're going to have small little plants and eventually over time you'll have bigger growth of more sophisticated shrubbery and eventually in 100 years you have these big forests. Okay, some of the forests were able to be maintained and it's a couple of them after 100 years started to decline. So in that area, even if they didn't ask this, but if they ask you, the hemlocks seem to want to prevail in this area. So all of them started to grow. There was growth after the glacier. Okay, all three species grew after the glacier retreated. Okay, and um, the question here, like for the other three answers, those things might have happened, but the question really is focusing on what's happening to these species of tree. So I can see why maybe you might have made other choices, but it's the graph is focusing on these trees. So what is happening to the trees after the retreat? And so that's where your focus needs to be with that question. Okay? Anybody have another thought? All right, so yes, when glaciers retreat, the water goes somewhere, so sea level's going to rise. It might have flooded someplace else, and it's probably due to climate change. All of those things might be true, but it has nothing to do with the trees. Okay, that's not what the graph is showing you. The graph is only showing you, excuse me, information about the trees. So you have to focus on that. All right, look at this one. Your breeding area in North America. So you have dark spots where overwintering. You have shaded area where the spring breeding occurs, and that's a very large area. You have dotted spots where spring and summer breeding occurs, and you have summer. You have a okay. You had a darker shaded area, and then you have a lighter shaded area. Summer breeding occurs there. The arrows indicate the direction of movement during the fall and the spring. Okay, so that's taking that map apart. All right, letting someone in. Hold on. They don't seem to want to come in. There you go. Good afternoon, Kayla. Alrighty. So which of the following explanations is best supported by the data in the map above? So the Earth's climate has changed over the geological time, and plates of the crust, Earth's crust have shifted. Um, so again, there's no indication of plates in this picture, so A is not a good answer. And it really doesn't show you anything about geological time. There's no scale here to say how much time has passed, so that one's out. Um, Sea level. Okay. Got a couple of people who are saying D. Yes, Ladanian, you can. All right. So yes, animals migrate seasonally to mate and find food in different habitats. And that's all you can get out of this. So the arrows tell you which direction. So it looks like in the fall, they all seem to want to go to warmer climates. A couple of them go north in the spring, but that's what this is telling you. And it's showing you where they're going, what areas they're going, which areas have good breeding and which areas have low breeding. And that's all you're going to get out of this map. None of the rest of that is shown in the map. All right, last one. All right, the graph shows a change in sea level from the Cambrian period to today. So this is a geological timeline from prehistoric times to today. Now this one is looking at sea level. The last answer was D. It was about, let me go back for a minute and repeat that. The last answer, the animals migrate seasonally to mate and find food in different habitats. So again, the arrows are showing migration habits, and usually they go because migrate so that they can have a warmer climate, so that they can mate and find food. Because if you stay in the north, you typically don't want to be in the north too, because of cold climates and land being covered, you can't find food, that sort of thing. All right. Thank you for asking. So yes, if I go forward and you don't get the answer or you don't understand the answer, please ask. Okay. Um, okay. Says which of the following is correctly describes the trend seen in the data. So you got this squiggly, this is a graph thing, and you got this squiggly line, and you've got falling sea levels on the right of the dotted line and rising sea levels on the on the falling on the left and rising on the right. And what does it seem to be it seemed to be doing one thing up until recently. Now what is it doing? Okay, got two people who say it's B. All right, so the lowest sea level, so there's a lot going on. Um, and really right now, what it's if you're looking at the top right now, we are experiencing the falling, but they didn't give you that as a choice. What they the choice that they did give you was B. The lowest sea level occurred during um, the Paleogene period. That is correct. So right at the top, if you take it away, because it was rising at the beginning of that period, and then towards the end of that period, it started to fall. And it looks like it's been falling ever since. It hasn't gone back um, to a high level since. So you got to look way at the top because right now, if you just kind of glance at it in the box, it looks like it's rising. But as you remember, you're going from the bottom up to the present day time. And so the very top squiggle at the top before it changes into the Neogene and Quaternary, this it's all falling. And it started falling then and it hasn't gone back up since. Okay. Everybody see that? Okay. That was the last one, right? Yep, that's the last question. All right. So, um, read over those sections again. Module. So that was 2.4 and 2.5. I'm going to go in the AP classroom and change those. I'll let you know when I've deleted the past score and you can redo it. What has also been assigned to you already is this one. I think only one person has attempted to work on that. So you can work on this one first, then I'll let you know when you can go back in and uh, redo those questions. Okay? Any questions? Any questions? So do this first. This may take you to the end of class, and so it might not be until next time that you get to redo the others. All right, so that's 2.4 and 5 that I need to look at and switch up. 2.6 is also available for you to do in the AP class, but do this one first. Do the FRQs first. Okay. Like I said, as far as when I checked the grade book last, only one person had done that. All right, let me stop sharing and do attendance, and then I will take care of the AP classroom. All right, so again, everybody should be working on the FRQ 2.5, 2.6. Jacoby, I think you were the only one who attempted to answer those questions. Okay. All right. Thank you, Kayla, for redoing that question. And again, if you haven't done the practice question for, let me see. All right, I only have one person. If you haven't done the two people who haven't done the practice ecological um, tolerance question in the grade book, um, keep in mind it's just the statement that you give has to be an if then. In order, if you state it like it's a testable hypotheses are always a statement in the format is if this is happening, then this will happen. Okay. Let me go fix the AP classroom. Everybody wants a verification code. Oh, thanks. My goodness. They have changed the way they made some changes to the AP classroom, so now they changed the way they show the scores. So actually, wait a minute. Wait, no. Okay. You have just made it harder for me to do this. All right, Abigail, you need to do yours. Okay, there's nothing for me to reset. And again, if you got a two, I'm going to reset yours as well. Give you the opportunity to get a 3 on this one. If you haven't done it, and there's a couple of you who haven't done it, please go in and do it. But not yet. I haven't reset it yet. They used to be able to show it all on one page, and now I had to go back and see whose I need to reset. All right, so good job. The only people I'm not resetting are Akia and Deja. You are the only two that got 3 out of 3 on that assignment. Everybody else, I'm going to reset. All right, so that's 2.4. I'll do 2.5 in a minute. So again, everybody, I'll tell you when, because I haven't done it yet. But everybody except Deja and Akia are going to need to redo 2.4 because I'm about to reset it and I have to do them individually. Okay, so I've done everybody. Like I said, a couple of you didn't start, so you need to start. All right, so you can go in and redo 2.4. I see everybody get a 3. Now I'm going to work on 2.5. It made this so difficult to do. All right, and I think some of you go through this too quickly. Take your time because I'm not going to do this again. They have made this difficult to do for me to go in and do. So take your time. So, and I'll let you know when I have done natural disturbances. And again, I'm only going to reset it if you got a 3 on it, I'm going to leave it alone. Okay, so for 2.5, I don't have to bother Akia, Shikobi, Brooklyn, Arshis, or Deja. I don't, y'all all got 3 on that, so I'll leave that alone. But everybody else got a 1 or a 2, I'm changing it. Like I said, I'm not going to do this again. So next time, just please take your time. This is once in a lifetime redemption. All right, Natalie, I'm going to assume that you just did yours because it wasn't done before. So I'm not going to touch that one. Hmm. All right, so all of 2.5 has also been reset. So again, the people who don't have to do 2.5 are Akia, Shakobi, Natalie, Brooklyn, Arshis, and Deja. You're good. Everybody else go in and get that 3.3. I mean, 3 out of 3. And again, this was a lot to do, so I'll not be doing this again. All right, so please go in and check the AP Classroom to see if your score was deleted so that you can replenish the score. Otherwise, it'll be a 0 because we just took the time to go through and give you the answers. You could take your time and go put them in the AP Classroom. I did write down the previous score, so if you don't redo it, that's the score I'm going to put in the grade book. And everybody is present today. So again, if you haven't made that correction and you got time to do it, then it's going in as a 0 or whatever the previous score was. Okay, folks, if you have no questions for me, I'll see you on Friday. Have a great rest of your afternoon.